I just felt myself being pulled in all different directions. But I did know what I did not want to do. One was that I didn't want to do psychology research. I found it pretty dry at the time. And the second thing I knew was that if I did have to do psychology research, it was not going to be in the area of cognition. Because to me, that seemed like the most, the driest of the courses I had taken.
You just heard Steve Most from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. Garth interviewed Steve for episode 248 of Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff.
Hi, my name is Drew Christopher. I joined SDP back in 1996 because I just wanted to be a better teacher, and I figured something called the Society for the Teaching of Psychology would help me in that regard, and it did. I became involved in a variety of task force, a variety of working groups, and so forth early on in my career. And looking back on it now, I think one of the biggest benefits wasn't just becoming a better teacher, but all the colleagues that I met along the way, and I'm still friends with today, who are also helping me still be a good teacher, if not a great teacher. Those professional connections have lasted a lifetime, and both personally and professionally, they're probably one of the most rewarding things that I can look back on the over 30 years I've been teaching and say it's probably the best thing I've ever done.
To join the Society for the Teaching of Psychology for only $35 a year, please visit teachpsych.org.
Hi, Psych Sessions listeners. This is Stephen Chu, one of the authors of Psychology in Your Life. For the new edition, I've created a series of brief videos that target common student problems in learning. They give practical, research-based strategies to help students learn more effectively. This new resource is called Improving Student Learning, a Video Guide. If you'd like to learn more about these videos or see a sample, feel free to reach out to me at stephen.chu, C-H-E-W, at www.norton.com.
Faculty colleagues, I am sounding the alarm. Psych content is great, but it's not enough. And so we need textbook publishers to come in and help us deliver the skills of psychology to our students, which is where Macmillan is stepping in with its course platform, Achieve. Now more than ever, we need students who can think critically and who can be data literate. We need them to be able to manage things like responsible use of AI ethically. The new Achieve from Macmillan Learning is addressing each of these skills one by one in their course platform. So if you haven't checked out Achieve in a while, you can go and check out their psychology titles at achieve.macmillanlearning.com. Save yourself some time, give your students some skills, check out Achieve. Hello, colleagues. It's Garth, and I am joined today by Stephen Most, who is professor of psychology at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. A real pleasure to chat with you as well, because I know how much you've done for psychology education. So it's a real treat.
Well, I hope that for people who don't know about you, what little I know about you so far is that it is apparent to me that you love teaching. So that is, I can just tell, you just see the content that some people put out and you're like, oh, they get it. And they care about their students and they care about the discipline. So anyway, I hope that's true, but that's the vibe you're putting off. Is that the vibe you're going for?
It's the vibe that I hope is coming across. I don't necessarily try to portray it in any, affectation kind of way, but I'm just genuinely kind of lose myself when I'm teaching. I just really enjoy it. I guess it's like a state of flow.
Well, I think that most of our audience just leaned in a little bit because that means that you're one of us. And so that's lovely to hear. Now, you got to tell me the story. And of course, everybody who heard me introduce where you live and teach is like Sydney, Australia? Yes, Sydney, Australia. So how did you get to Sydney, Australia? Because I think you're an American guy, right?
I am an American. I'm originally from New Jersey. I went down and did my postdoc at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, and met my now wife there. She was a PhD student in psychology. I was a postdoc in psychology, and we were together for a year there. Then my postdoc advisor moved our lab up to Connecticut, so we were doing Connecticut to Nashville long distance. Then she got a postdoc in Connecticut, but I got a faculty job down at the University of Delaware. And so we were doing that. And then she got a faculty job at Temple University in Philadelphia. And so we were able to, for a few years, be together. And then we both got job offers at different universities in Sydney, where she is from. I forgot to mention that. So that's why we're here in Sydney.
Wow. The two-body problem. That's such a big one to tackle. And lots of people have been through that, right? Because those are the years where you find the person you're going to date and maybe even marry someday, right? So what was that like? What advice would you give to people who are dealing with something like that? Two faculty members trying to be together and work it out.
It's tough. It really is tough. And some institutions are more willing to work with you than others. Out here in Australia, we were actually lucky to get two jobs separately at the same time. We did things like we got our first cell phones when we were together. Neither of us had a cell phone together. We just got shared plan, which allowed us to sort of like constantly be in touch. There's all these kinds of things that you can do to sort of maintain connection, but it is really, really hard. Fortunately, we're in the same, specialized in the same area of cognitive psychology. And so we've been able to collaborate a fair number of times and put out joint papers. And so it's been a partnership through and through.
That's kind of like the dream or the nightmare. But for you, I think it's the dream, right? To do that with your wife. And you guys have been doing it for so long now. How long have you guys been together at this point?
They're 23 years.
Wow. Yeah. We're just behind you. But yeah, fun. Okay. Well, that is one that there's just like a small percentage of our audience who deals with that, but it comes up in these episodes every once in a while. And it's fun to hear how people have navigated that over time. And, I'm sure at times it seems really, really hard, like, and this is not going to come together for us, but, the fates have a way of making it happen. And of course, our hard work and diligence, right? So
you can't overlook that.
No. Well, hey, I'm excited to talk to you. I've actually been looking at some of your stuff and it's, again, the teaching stuff sticks out to me. Some of the research stuff. One of my favorite, I think we have our sort of pet truths in psychology, themes that kind of grab us at different times in our career. One of them that is grabbing me for the last couple of years is just the inherent bias that we experience as human beings, right? And I like to talk to my students about that. I know that you've done some research on that. So why don't you just tell us kind of what has that line of research, or what is your line of research? Where did it start? Where did psychology capture you? And then how has it progressed since then?
That's an interesting question. So going back to my university days as a student, when I was a psychology major, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt a bit lost. I just felt myself being pulled in all different directions. But I did know what I did not want to do. One was that I didn't want to do psychology research. I found it pretty dry at the time. And the second thing I knew was that if I did have to do psychology research, it was not going to be in the area of cognition. Because to me, that seemed like the most the driest of the courses I had taken. I was really into the psychology of emotion and developmental psychology, individual differences, and here I am, cognitive researcher who's putting out the second edition of our cognitive textbook.
So let me back up then. Let's go sometimes we do this later in the episode, but I think this is the appropriate time. Can you just tell us, you grew up in New Jersey, and like, what was your kind of academic experience growing up at elementary school, high school? What kind of student were you? Did you know you wanted to go to college, all that stuff?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go to college. My dad was a chemistry professor on a small college campus in East Orange, New Jersey. We had a faculty house that, you know, how sometimes the colleges will give you a faculty house until you get on your feet. It was his first teaching job. And we were supposed to stay living there for, you know, up to a year. But we wound up living there until I was 18. So we were there for about 17, 18 years. And so I grew up on this college campus where students would often be over at our house for programs that my dad was leading, or the campus. We lived right behind the maintenance building, so the maintenance staff would come by and say hi. It really was being part of this community, this on-campus community. The students would teach me to play Frisbee and give me rides in the back of their pickup truck. And I'd often go to my dad's classes when there's no one else to look after me. I'd just sit in the front of his classroom drawing in little blue books. And so I really, just the life of a college campus, I guess, really felt like home to me. But it wasn't just purely, you know, the academics. It was just sort of how, you know, the college campus is sort of a microcosm, a little universe in itself. Everyone makes the college run. And it's, you know, it's a place not just for the professors and the students, but for the maintenance workers and the security guards and the bookstore workers. It's just I guess that was my first place that, like, a university environment made me feel at home. I was an okay student in terms of my academics as I got older. And I really started to find my sort of academic passions when I went to graduate school, and was able to start, you know, pursuing questions that I was generating, that pursue my own curiosity rather than learning necessarily to the textbook or to the syllabus.
How did you choose an undergraduate institution? Like, what was that process like? Did you apply to a bunch of places? Did you know where you wanted to go? Where'd you end up?
I applied to a bunch of places, mostly small liberal arts schools. I wound up going to Brandeis University up in Boston, which had that really nice mix of being both a research institution, but with also a liberal arts emphasis and vibe. And it was there that I met my first really influential mentor in the field. His name was Joe Cunningham. He was just one of my favorite lecturers. He made psychology come to life in front of the lecture room. I remember he was talking to us about what it was like to be a clinician, and he brought a teddy bear up on stage and started having like a dialogue with it. It was sort of role playing in front of us what it was like to be in a session. And what was remarkable about his mentorship was that he guided me on some independent projects while I was a student there. But then I graduated, and I still wasn't quite sure, you know, where I was going or how to get, you know, where my interest lay in the field or how to get there. And I approached him. I was living near the campus at the time, and I approached him. I said, I'd like to continue doing my own independent research in the field, doing some readings. I need someone to give me feedback on my thoughts, see whether I'm getting things right. Would you be willing to give me feedback on papers I still want to write? This is the first time I was really motivated to really write papers. It was after I had left the university, and he said he was really happy to do that. He, really helped me find my passions there, even though I was no longer officially enrolled. It was a real model of mentorship that, at some level, I try to emulate when I can today.
Yeah, it's above and beyond mentorship, right? Like here's somebody who's not getting compensated for this at all. And for some people, I think we all have colleagues. I don't want to, they have all of our colleagues have opinions about these kinds of things, but some people are like, well, that's not a job I get paid for. Other people can't fathom that. So when you were in your undergraduate at Brandeis, did you become a psych major right away?
I took a couple of years. That you got at the time, you had to the end of your sophomore year to declare a major, and so I did a bunch of exploring. I took some English classes because I really loved English literature. I took some studio art classes because I thought maybe I wanted to be a graphic designer, and one of the reasons I went into psychology, both it is partly because of the role modeling of people like Joe Cunningham, that professor I mentioned, and how much they brought it to life. But also, psychology was this field where I could take any of my diverse interests that I was interested in and try to understand it through a psychological lens. There's a great, students may be interested in the intersection between art and psychology, and there's a great fertile ground there. They might be interested in the psychological impact of great stories. And so there's, a lot of overlap there. Anything that you're interested in as a person, you can explore through a psychological lens. And so that was, I guess, one of the big draws of it by the time it came time to declare my major.
When you were just sharing that right now, I just felt like I was one of your students, and you have shared this with a bunch of students a bunch of times. Tell me I'm wrong, right? APA Publishing wants to give you 15% off your order. If you teach classes like counseling, clinical psychopathology, or multicultural psychology, then this is for you. APA Publishing has books that are written by experts that are grounded in evidence and really help teachers. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a book they have right now called Helping Skills. It's in its 6th edition, and it gives students clear, practical frameworks for understanding and learning counseling techniques. It's perfect for hands-on practice and skill development. Here's another one. Cultural Humility helps students build self-awareness and engage meaningfully across diverse identities and experiences. So head to apa.org because they want to give you 15% off your order today using code PS15. That's capital P, capital S, 15. Go check out APA Publishing.
Not in those words necessarily, but yeah, I do feel like, especially students who are uncertain about what they want to do,
that's right,
or don't have the confidence. They look around them and they see that this person over there knows exactly what they want to do, and they're getting all A's. I can't compete, or and they just feel like they haven't found their focus yet. I feel like there's so much power to sharing our own sort of stories and our journeys, especially when they didn't follow a direct path where I did this right, I did this right, I did this right, I got an A here, I got an A here, I got an A there. There's a lot of wandering, a little bit of getting lost that you have to do before finding your way. And so, yeah.
It's so disconnected for students. And to have somebody come in and say, so you're interested in psychology and you're also an artist. There is a way forward in psychology for somebody like that, right? Because no art instructor. I mean, they're probably out there somewhere, but maybe like an art instructor wouldn't occur to them necessarily that psychology would be a good way for this person to and advising too. Like for us, it's very like you choose a pathway towards a degree outcome. And so we don't really operate with a lot of integration of these things. So anyway, that really resonated with me. It's a great way to explain the usefulness, the utility of a psychology degree and how it can intersect with like lots of things that are going on in your life. So, all right. So, but I'm also, I think I heard you correctly that when you finished with your BA, you didn't go right to grad school. What'd you do?
A few different things. So the first thing I wanted to do was sort of get up sort of where I saw the action as being. I loved being up in Boston. I loved being near my old alma mater. I knew that Boston's full of all these great schools, so many different universities there. And so the first year that I was out of Brandeis, I worked at several different jobs. My full-time job was working in a local copy shop, not coffee shop, copy shop, where people would come in and, often students from my alma mater asking to make copies for their projects. That was the job that gave me my salary and gave me health insurance. But at the same time, I worked a per diem job in a locked psychiatric facility to get exposure to a range of different psychological conditions, which I certainly did. I worked a part-time job as the assistant fencing coach at my alma mater, and I started looking around for volunteer positions and research assistant jobs in the area. I approached people at Wellesley College, at Boston University, and around that time, the APA had this traveling psychology exhibit that was going from science museum to science museum.
Yeah,
and it was a fantastic hands-on exhibit. And so I volunteered at the Museum of Science in Boston as sort of someone who, as a guide to that exhibit. And as part of that exhibit, the museum would bring in every week a local expert, a local academic from the area who would give a public talk on their research. And so I would attend all these. And whenever one struck my interest, I would go up to them afterwards and ask if they needed a research assistant. And and eventually there was a professor who came and gave a talk there, and they were very receptive to having a volunteer research assistant. So that became sort of my fourth part-time job right there, without pay.
Well, okay. So in this year, you're really busy, right? I feel like we have lots of energy when we're, in our early 20s, but you're really busy, but you had not, this is like the moratorium period, right? For you, where you're just kind of like figuring it out. Like, I'm not going to make a hasty decision. It sounds like you weren't going to jump into grad school. You weren't going into the workforce permanently. How were you thinking about that year?
Really just getting a lot of experience. I felt that I had learned a lot at college. I'd grown a lot at college, but I hadn't fully taken advantage of all the opportunities there were to get involved with research, or the kinds of things that give you a foothold in getting into graduate school. And so I saw those years as a time to sort of get more experience in the field, whether it was volunteering or otherwise, to brush up and study for the psychology GRE. And so, in my second year out, that volunteer job in the lab I had turned into a paid position. So that became like my full-time job. And then I went halfway across the country the following year to get more research experience in different labs. I still was trying to find what my interests were. I was just following them from one thing to another, and then wound up applying to graduate school and getting in at that point.
Where did you go halfway across the country?
I went to the University of Wisconsin, moved to Madison, Wisconsin. And had the coldest winter of my life there.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah, and then, but even once I went back to graduate school, I went back to study emotional development and personality, and which is what I thought I wanted to do. But then there was this young, just out of graduate school, new assistant professor there, who was studying visual cognition. This is Dan Simons before he did the gorilla video. And he opened up his lab to everyone. And I started being part of that lab, and boy, did that change my impression and attitude and love of cognitive psychology, because it wasn't just limited to the textbook page. It was like really striking, visual cognition phenomena that you couldn't believe was happening right in front of your eyes. It really brought it to life in a really inspiring way. So even once I went to graduate school, there were still, major changes in direction.
So let's pause here and talk about something you said earlier, where you said, I knew I didn't want to be a researcher, and I knew I definitely did not want to do research in cognition. So this is the moment where that shifts for you. Is that correct?
That's right. So I was about 1 or 2 years. I stuck with the emotional development lab for the first year or two, but I started this side project on inattentional blindness, which is what that phenomenon with the gorilla video is called. In fact, I'm one of the players in white in the gorilla video.
What? No way! Yeah, that's great. Y'all look for Steve Most in the video. That's so cool.
Yeah, and so just start a side project that built off of that. Dan and I and our collaborators looked at the findings. We're like, this can't be right, and we just ran another experiment and then another experiment, because we just couldn't believe that people were missing seeing the kinds of things that we were putting right in front of their eyes, just because their attention was preoccupied with something else. It showed how our conscious experience of the world isn't just about where your eyes are looking; it's about what your mind is doing with that information.
Okay, so hold on. If somebody doesn't know what you're talking about, if they've not seen it before, can you just explain that little study?
Okay, sure. So if anyone has not heard of this study before, then I advise them to pause this recording and go to YouTube and look up The Selective Attention Task by Dan Simons, and just do that for about 1 or 2 minutes. Can you believe you missed that?
Yeah.
The idea is that in this study.
Hey folks, I want to talk about autism spectrum disorder. Specifically, I want to talk about how good testing can help adults get the help that they need. But first, a few statistics. Did you know that almost 62 million people worldwide would qualify for the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis? That's 1 in 127. And when we think about teenagers in the US, that's more than 50,000 youth a year who are going to be making that transition from childhood to adulthood with this diagnosis. And many of them are actually going to lose critical services at this time. So enter ASRS. That is the Autism Spectrum Rating Scale for adults. It's scientifically valid. It's a multi-informant rating scale from leading experts Sam Goldstein and Jack Naglieri, tailored specifically to adults in their unique presentation. And it identifies late emerging symptoms and the masking behaviors that often go unnoticed. It's perfect for classroom demonstrations or projects and for training. This test goes for real-world relevance to help people. If you want to learn more, head to mhs.com and check out the Education and Training Partnership Program, or simply click Contact Us to get more information. That is mhs.com.
It's a video of 3 players wearing black shirts and 3 players wearing white shirts, all running around, intermingling, and passing a basketball to other members of their team. So players in white are passing to other players in white. Players in black are passing to other players in black. And the participants told, okay, count the total number of passes made by the players in white. And people do this for about a minute. And then they report how many passes they counted. And then they're asked, okay, well, did you see anything else in that video besides the basketball players? Now, if for people who have not heard this study before, a huge number of them don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see anything else. There's just the basketball players and the basketballs. But if you rewind the tape and show it to them again and tell them this time, don't count the passes, just watch. they see that partway through this video, a person dressed in a full body gorilla outfit just casually walks through the middle of the game, not hidden by any of them, just stops in the middle, pounds its chest at you, and walks off, fully visible for about 10 to 15 seconds. And it's shocking. It was shocking that people did not see this gorilla. It's a phenomenon called inattentional blindness. The reason it has that term is because what it really reveals is the power of attention, the role that attention plays in our conscious experience of the world. The idea being that if your attention is fully absorbed in that counting task, then your eyes may be looking directly at that gorilla as it walks through, but your attention isn't processing it. Your attention is on those other players, and therefore the gorilla is not brought to awareness. So it's inattentional blindness.
Yes. Oh my goodness. How fun is that? Okay. So at this point, you are a student at Harvard University. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
How did you decide on Harvard? At what point did you think, yeah, this is an option for me?
I honestly never really even. It took a long time for me to think of it as an option for me. That first research assistant job I had, where I was volunteering, and that this, the following year became my full-time job, a paid research assistantship. That was actually at a lab at Harvard. It just happened to be that the person who I made a connection with and who was looking for a research assistant was actually Jerome Kagan, a famous developmental psychologist. And it was one of those moments where it's like, this is an opportunity that I did not see in my future, and I'm going to do the best job I can at being a research assistant here. And it became enough a part of the lab and enough a part of that sort of intellectual kind of environment there that when it came time to apply to graduate school, Jerry was very happy to sort of argue and advocate for me as a graduate student.
I've interviewed a couple former Harvard grad students, some of whom became professors, and this is often the story I hear from them, especially when they feel like, I don't really, I didn't have aspirations to go to Harvard necessarily, but it comes through these relationships. Mentoring relationships are so powerful, it seems to me.
It's been really a constant theme that, I guess the best way I try to honor the role that they've played in my life is to try to pay it forward a bit. But at the same time, it's just a tremendous amount. I was going to say of luck, but I think it's also just appreciating sort of a role of, it's not just a matter of how smart you are, or it's about how much are you engaging with others' ideas, how much are you making yourself useful, even if it's something that's it's just a day-to-day task in the lab. These things have a way of building up and building trust, and so the path to an academic career isn't just built on IQ alone. It helps. But,
sure. Yeah. Well, and you, in your story, you have this boldness of going up to these people who are doing presentations and asking them. I mean, who has the audacity to go up to these researchers and say, "Do you need a research assistant?" That's
well, I don't think I knew any better at the time, and this was a time when I really email wasn't really the obvious thing it is now. But my first intellectual hero, who I started writing those papers about after college, was a social psychologist named David McClelland. Studied motivation, individual differences in achievement motivation and power motivation. I would go to the library and pull his books off shelves like they were candy. And he was a professor in Boston, and I wound up calling him at his house. I wound up looking him up because I didn't know. There was no email. I just said, "Hi, I'm a volunteer research assistant in a lab in your department. I'd love to meet you and talk to you about your research." I guess as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that I don't know if that's necessarily something I recommend to everyone, calling professors at their houses.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think most professors, including myself, if someone writes to them over email and expresses genuine interest, and they're like, "Hey, I've been reading some of your stuff, and I've been enjoying it. I have some questions, or I'd love to learn more about this. Would you have some time? Could I come chat with you for a little bit?" I come across so many, even like current students, undergraduates, who are so shy about impinging on their professor's time that they don't want to. I think a lot of the reticence that students have on making these connections with professors often comes down to they feel that, why would this professor want to talk to me?
Right.
Or just saying, seeing too much of a distance, a gap between, where they are and where the professor is. That it doesn't occur to them that it's something that we love to do. and for many of us, it's why we're in this job. I personally love, there's, a certain amount of impact that we have on the world through our research, if we're lucky. But the impact that we have just on, helping a student, find their way, and the way that snowballs, then they'll get to a place where they can help more people, and this snowballs, and you're often just not aware of this greater impact that you can have.
That's right.
By helping those who are that we're in a position to help.
Well, I think we've all gotten that email from a student that we used to have, right? And I keep those in a special folder because they're so meaningful to me when you actually hear the stories. I wish we heard them more, but when they do, it's gold. The other thing though and I know there's probably research about privilege and about this, but the boldness that you had, and which I also share, I have gotten into some doors. I've opened some doors with just boldness. Sometimes you got to not care about getting turned down. I'm sure you had a lot of people say no to you over time, but you were it's grit, right? It's tenacity, and that can often be, no matter who you are, taking big swings. I think can sometimes even silence the barriers that you would put up for yourself, right? And so it's not always true. The way that you may interpret your abilities or how somebody will receive you is not necessarily true. So I love your story for that. It's really great. Yeah. Okay. So, by the way, folks, this all comes forward to where Steve is today, and I just wanted to say congratulations on the second edition of Cognition as well. So that's pretty cool when a textbook goes to the second edition. So we're going to get there in a moment, but at this point, Steve in his eyes have been opened in grad school to the fact that cognition is pretty cool and engaging. I imagine that your findings for that gorilla study, that inattentional blindness study, you guys were just giddy at that point, right? And I imagine that opened up everything for you at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I shouldn't take credit for the gorilla study. I was one of the players,
of course.
In the game.
You witnessed it.
Yeah, I was a part of it, but it's a Simons and Chabris paper. It's not a Simons Chabris and Most paper. But my dissertation did wind up stemming from that. So we created a computerized version of it where we could control, so we could parametrically control what are people paying attention to, what's the similarity between the unexpected object and the other things in the screen, what's the role of it, how can we parametrically adjust the brightness or the salience of this unexpected object to see, what role that plays. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We even had a condition that we called the quote unquote cheat condition because we wanted a baseline. to show that, well, okay, let's have a baseline where everyone notices this unexpected object. So we had this big bright red cross. It was the only bright red cross in an entire field of black and white objects. And we're like, okay, this will be our cheat condition because everyone's going to see it. And it turned out that 33% of people didn't see that bright red cross. And so we had, yeah. So,
no way. That is wild to me. Okay. Thank you, psychology, for giving us all these moments. Awesome.
So things like that where, I mean, and now that I've had, 30 years of research experience, it's certainly true that these moments of just not being able to believe what you're looking at when you're dating, it's rare. And I guess I was lucky that that came early in my career and sort of stunned me into the amazingness of cognitive psychology. So that was another element of luck, is just having that in your face, unbelievable finding that you just got to pursue some more early on. So
you, out of there, did you get some teaching experience while you were there too at Harvard?
Yeah. I started out as a teaching assistant, or as they're called there, teaching fellow, and then moved on up to be head teaching fellow for intro psych for a couple of years, and then developed my own social development course for fourth year students. The graduate department had this program at the time where senior graduate students could develop their own sort of small size seminar class. And so I leapt at that opportunity. So I worked with a friend who was a social psychologist to put that together.
Who did you work with?
So I just pursued...
For the intro psych course, did you work with Schachter and Gilbert, or who was doing that?
Yeah, their textbook hadn't come out yet. There were two professors who I TA'd for in intro psych. One was Richard McNally, who's a clinical psychologist, and then the other one was Patrick Kavanaugh, who is a perception psychologist.
Wow. Okay. Do you still teach intro?
Yeah. The way it is at UNSW right now is a little bit different in the sense that the intro course is run in a way so that the students get a series of lectures from people who specialize in that particular area. So I'll come in and I'll give a series of lectures on attention and cognition. And someone else will come in and they'll give a series of lectures on, clinical psychology. But I, for a number of years, have been doing that cognition and memory and attention stream.
Well, so you, after you finished at Harvard, you kind of bounced around. You told us all the places you went to. And do you still have an affiliation in Delaware? Is that true or is that not true?
Yeah, it's true. So I loved being at University of Delaware. It was it was a place that really supported my early career. I loved my colleagues there. And so when my wife and I got our jobs in Sydney, it wasn't a matter of, I want to move because I'm not happy where I am. I loved it. And so, and fortunately, it was a kind of a mutual kind of, they appreciated having me around as part of the department. So I arranged to have an adjunct position there, which is still, in place today.
Wow. So, you've continued your research, I imagine, right? And you're still doing research at UNSW, or are you mostly teaching, or are you mostly writing right now? Because, what are you up to? What's your job look like?
I'm a research teaching faculty, so I run my own lab where we've done a lot of work on the role of emotion in perception. And have started to develop a new line of research on sort of as well effort motivation, what makes people, willing to put in effort. That's a bit of a new direction as well. So it's a very active research program that I'm usually doing in conjunction with my PhD or my thesis students, as well as with collaborators. but also a lot of teaching. So, for example, I teach an annual honors seminar on the cognition. I love this seminar on the cognition and emotion of effective presentations. Because I could talk all day about like what I really love about the way certain presenters do and why I think they work. And so I decided to put together sort of a reading list and a workshop for students on not just practice giving presentations or following a recipe, to give good presentation, but understand the psychological principles behind it.
What's off the top of your head? Do you have a book that you really like from that class that you would recommend to folks?
Not yet. I mean, there's several good ones, but the reason I put together that class is also because I have in mind that it's a book I want to write. I'm sort of putting together a prospectus for it, and I figured, what better way to figure out if I have anything to say and what I want to say than to try to put it together as a class.
That's sneaky. I mean, in the best possible way. I didn't mean that as negative. I love this idea. You're basically going through. It's like going through the research to see where the gap is, right? And then and finding it. And I would imagine would that be more of a trade book sort of?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love that idea. Okay, so that's your favorite one. So you're teaching a bunch. What's the load like there?
Yeah, so my load for the past several years has been I run this seminar every year. I also teach several lectures into intro psych on cognition, and then I co-coordinate a class in the third term on perception and cognition. So it starts out looking at sort of low-level perception, moving up to sort of like the role of categorization in perception, and then moving on to the role of attention and memory, and sort of that fine line or that blurry line between perception and cognition. So that's a course that I both lecture into and co-coordinate.
Right, and then you're writing on the side, and I always ask textbook authors, and it sounds like you're going to keep writing, so you don't hate it. That's great. But I always ask textbook authors who take on these big projects, like how did that come about for you? And what do you like about that research and writing process?
Well, first of all, so the textbook came about. So first of all, it's something that I've always had in the back of my mind as something I'd love to do someday. Like I said, when I first started taking classes in cognition as an undergraduate, it did not hit me over the head as something I wanted to do. It was hard of all the classes I took, it was the one that was, largely abstract. And to my mind, it was one of the drier parts of my coursework. And then the sort of the eye-opening experience of just seeing how, for example, inattentional blindness, completely related to safety in everyday life. There's stuff. There's actually types of accidents, road accidents in the world called look but fail to see accidents. And so there, things that we study in cognitive psychology have very real world relevance, and sometimes they're just downright surprising. You just can't. So the excitement of starting to understand how our minds work, how we make decisions, and seeing it come to life through my mentors, the people who opened my eyes to it, and that includes Marvin Chun, my textbook co-author, who was then my postdoc advisor. I just really relished this opportunity to get other students who might have been like me, who might have thought, seen it as kind of like one of the drier areas, to get them as excited about it as I now was. And I felt like I had a particular kind of window into maybe how to do this or what might work, because I had been in the position where I had not appreciated it at the start. And then Oxford University Press, the publisher, it turned out that they were looking to put out a new cognitive textbook, And they approached my co-author, Marvin Chun, which was a really smart move on their part, because Marvin's just a brilliant researcher, but with also a passion for teaching. And he, I guess, through our professional collaborations, knew my love for teaching and communication. And so the first thing he said is that I'll consider doing this if Steve will do it with me. And so it was just, and the opportunity to do it together with him. Like I said, the idea of doing a textbook had always been something that had appealed to me. But then the opportunity to do it with Marvin was just, it's been a really fun journey. We just really love bouncing ideas off each other and sort of finding fun new ways to get the ideas across.
So when the first edition, this was a first edition book, right? And it came out, a few years ago? Is that right?
2021. Yep.
2021. How, that's like pandemic times, when you guys released that. How was the lift? Like, cause you signed that contract to do a book and then you actually have to do it. So what was that like?
It was a longer process than we thought. So we signed the contract to do it in, I think it was 2011. With the, we had estimated that we would be able to turn in a final product in 2015, and had underestimated just how much labor went into it. Because we were doing this also at the same time that we're, doing our other full-time jobs of running a research lab and teaching and producing, research articles from that. And so I think we delivered the product in 2020. So 5 years later than we had initially assumed we could. And then when it came to writing the second edition, we had a little bit less of an underestimation. We had already been through the process, but still you think, I just need to, update some references and maybe find where I wish I had said something different or said something in a different way. But boy, in the years since we published the first edition, the field has changed, the world has changed, the relevance of cognitive psychology has just taken on new forms. Who could imagine the role that AI would be playing in our world back in 2021? And so again, it was a labor to get the second edition out, but unfortunately it was again a labor of love.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I know it's coming out right away, so that's got to be exciting to have that off your plate. And then, but textbook writing friends of mine, they're just like, as soon as you get the first one out or the second one or whatever the next edition is, you're always now starting to think about other studies. You have a folder where you're putting things for the next edition. So the work never really, the brain work never really stops for you. What are you, what's kind of like unique about the way that you all approached your textbook? I know that you have teachers' hearts, so that's great. How did that work its way? Is that what's unique about it? Are the examples really, you went for a unique angle on examples, or what would you say to folks who want to check it out, who are teaching a cognitive class?
Yeah. So I think, examples are really, really key to the book and touching on real world, instances of where cognition is at work. Now, and I'm not talking about a phenomenon, going into the nuts and bolts of the phenomenon, and then saying, and by the way, this can be applied to this or this like this. Like the role, the scenarios and the vignettes that we paint to sort of introduce a concept really takes center stage. And so, for example, the very first chapter starts with the story of Captain Sullenberger, who his plane in 2009 took off from LaGuardia Airport and was just within a couple of minutes of taking off, hit a flock of geese, and he lost the plane's lost all its engines, and he doesn't know, what do I do? Do I try to make it to the nearest airstrip? He's on the radio trying to communicate back and forth with different air towers, and all the time thinking, am I really going to have to land this plane in the Hudson? And doing calculations about, can I do this? And so there's really dramatic, one of the more dramatic instances in the news, like in recent memory. And we talk, well, what does this have to do with cognitive psychology? Well, think about everything that had to happen. There's communication going on, and he had to attend both to the information on the, that the flight instruments are giving him. He had to make decisions about whether he could make it to a nearby airstrip, or and weigh that against the potential cost of landing it in the Hudson. He had to do emotion regulation because it's panic inducing. Almost everything about, and meanwhile, he was one of the few people who could have pulled this off because he had spent his career training for this kind of emergency. And so there's all this lifetime of learning that went into this. And so, if you think about it, like almost everything that went into every member of the crew and every passenger surviving that crash or that crash landing came down to cognitive psychology. And so from there, that's how we open up the first chapter. And then from there, we start telling the story. Like we treat the history of cognitive psychology as a story. Where did it come from? How is it different? What's the line between cognitive psychology and social psychology? On one hand, you could say, well, cognitive psychology has to do with attention and memory, but social psychologists are interested in attention and memory as well. So are clinical psychologists. So then where is the line? And so trying to really, probe, where are the boundaries of cognitive psychology? What defines it? What are its core characteristics? And how does this intersect with other areas of the field? And so that's another major theme that we have running through the book is, where are those intersections between cognitive psychology and social psychology, clinical psychology, developmental psychology, but then other areas like economics, right? Daniel Kahneman was one of the only psychologists to ever win a Nobel Prize, but he didn't win it in psychology because there's no Nobel Prize in psychology. He won it in economics because the fundamental insights that he and Tversky developed about human irrationality and decision making changed the field of economics. And so so those are a couple of things that we really just tried to permeate the manuscript with, was the telling the story. Where do these ideas come from? Giving it the book is full of these concrete, often emotionally engaging or relatable examples and stories, and just showing how it connects to other domains of knowledge. And two things that we weave through the book, which have become core to cognitive psychology, are like considerations of emotion, for example, which not too long ago was just considered like noise and was sort of on the outskirts of cognitive psychology, but now touches on just about every aspect of cognition and neuroscience, and not just for neuroscience's sake, but because understanding neural processes helps us understand the cognitive processes themselves as well.
So you basically wrote the book that you would have liked to have read when you were a younger person.
That's it. It's a deep-seated kind of like Freudian going back to my past, finding the origin of why I wanted to get involved with this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a good starting place, right? Like some people I've talked to are the teachers, like the amazing teachers they are because they had a bad teacher. Sometimes we kind of create the things that were lacking for us or that we perceived were lacking, right? And we couldn't connect to, so that we find a way to do it. That's really cool. That's Oxford University Press that you guys did that with. And I think your second edition is coming out right away. So congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you. It's available in late March. And so if any listeners want to check it out, they can also contact Oxford University Press for a digital sample copy just to check out.
Well, for sure, there's people who teach cognitive who are listening to this right now. So that's pretty cool to go check out. Well, hey, before I let you go, I have been collecting a few notes as we've been talking because I wanted to just ask you about them. Because I don't know. I like to ask experts, people who've done a lot of research about just some things that I'm interested in because I'm not a specialist, not a researcher, I'm a generalist. And I talk about some cognitive psychology ideas with my students. But could I just, I hope this works. If it doesn't work, I'll just edit it out. But I want to throw you a couple things that I've either kind of read about on your website or just heard from you today. So could you tell me a little bit about what do you think about this? Will be like a fast fire round. You talked about emotional perception. So how do emotions impact our perception? Do you have any interesting kind of anecdotes about that?
Sure. And in fact, that's been sort of the core of my research program over the last 25 years. Because like I said, I went into the field interested in emotional development and individual differences. And I came out of graduate school with specializing in inattentional blindness, attention, and perception. And so what the intellectual kind of struggle that I went through with myself during my postdoc was, how do I prevent myself from being drawn and quartered by my interests, being pulled in these different directions? Let's find a way to bring them together. Let's take a look at how emotion affects perception. And so there's a couple of things that we know about. We know that things that are highly emotional capture attention. They draw our attention even when we don't necessarily want to pay attention to them. And we know that if you're paying attention to one thing, then you often miss other things that are in front of your eyes. And so through my research program, we put together these ideas and introduced what we now call emotion-induced blindness. So this is where, in a typical kind of task, people are looking at a screen, they're seeing a rapid series of images going at about a rate of 10 per second, and they're just looking for one target. Among this whole stream of images, they just look for one target, and even though they're going by very, very fast, people are usually pretty good at seeing the target. But what happens is you just introduce a quick flash of an emotional picture. Like it could be a picture of some violence, or something disgusting, or even in some cases something that's very, very appealing. Then all of a sudden you can't see the one target you're looking at. That emotional picture captures attention so much that all of a sudden, when that target flashes up, you just don't see it. So it's almost like the emotion system and the perception system are wired together in such a way that our brain's, tendency to prioritize emotional stuff means that we'll miss other things that go right in front of our eyes if something emotional flashes by.
Wow.
And so again, that's something that we call emotion-induced blindness. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the last 20 years or so really trying to tease apart the mechanisms that are driving it. Because I think it's different from many other attention perception phenomena that are out there.
So cool. So cool. All right. The next one is about, you mentioned effort recently. So what can you tell us about effort in, a minute or two?
Yeah. So really, again, in a way, our shift into effort motivation isn't as much of a sharp left turn from what we were doing before as it sounds like, because what they have in common is what are we doing with our limited resources? With inattentional blindness is how are we using our limited attention to process some things and not others? Same thing with emotion-induced blindness. And so effort motivation is looking at where do we put our limited energy to? How do we make these decisions? And it turns out that there are differences between people in terms of their degree of effort aversion. And so, for example, if I said, hey, Garth, I have in this hand, I have a $20 bill. In this hand, I have a $10 bill. Which one do you want? Which one
20.
would you take?
I want the 20.
20, of course. Now, if I said, all right, well, let me put it this way. I've got a $20 bill. I got a $10 bill. Now, to get the $20 bill, you have to do this tedious half-hour effortful task. To get this $10, I'll just give it to you and you can walk away. Which one would you take?
Give me the 10.
Give you the 10, right?
Yeah.
And but some, and some people might, and then I can say, well, okay, what about give you the 10? What if I actually could only walk away with 5? Or for the half-hour task, you could do the 20. I can move that lower amount up and down until we get to a point that's called an indifference point, where you can take or leave either one.
Yeah.
And once you reach that point, you have this sort of, measure in real economic terms of how much are people willing to sacrifice in order to avoid putting in that effort. And so this actually came out of was developed through an honors project from an honors student in my lab. We worked together to put a paper. His name was Toby Johnson. And then I had a follow-up honors project where the student gave people this task, so get this individual difference in how much are people willing to sacrifice to avoid the effort. And then at the end of that task, they were asked to check a yes or no box. And what that yes or no box simply was, do you give us permission to access your real-world Psych 1 grades? And the question was, do these individual differences in effort aversion that emerge from just this 15-minute lab task, predict their real-world grades? And what we found was that the more that people were willing to sacrifice to avoid the effort, in other words, the more they were like, I don't want to put in the effort in this 15-minute lab task, the lower their grades across 2 different terms of Psych 1, even when you accounted for individual differences in how much they reported procrastinating. So it seems like, and so this, tying this lab task to this real world task now just opened up like a world of possibilities that we're exploring right now. Like, what is the role of effort motivation in just critical thinking in terms of like how much you're able to discern good evidence from bad evidence? How much are you willing to give reflective answers versus impulsive answers in a critical thinking task? Or what happens if rather than you putting in that effort to get money for yourself, what if we frame it in terms of a pro-social cause? Like that money is going to go to a charity of your choice. If you get people to think about this, I'm doing this for others, does that encourage a level of effort motivation that we didn't see before? And so we've got this whole line of research going on right now, taking a look at what do the individual differences in effort motivation predict in terms of critical thinking and even up to sports performance. How can we modulate this? How can we foster greater effort motivation? And then we even have sort of a capstone idea where UNSW's got a program that helps nurture the careers of budding entrepreneurs. And they keep a whole bunch of metrics of entrepreneurial success. And we're going to take a look at, to what degree does effort motivation predict these different metrics of how successful people are going to be?
I love it. Yeah, that's so great. I know I've kept you over time. Do you have time for 2 more?
Sure.
Okay. All right. What would you want to share from a cognitive psych perspective on AI? How are you thinking about it these days? Like, what's the important part of that intersection for you?
So that's a tricky one because there's so many different ways that can be answered.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And okay, so I'll go with this one. It can be used for good and bad. Obviously, when it comes to our ability to uncover new mechanisms and treatments for disease and things we weren't able to do before, it's just it's an undiluted plus, right? But of course, a lot of the way people use AI now, students, but others as well, are to use it for cognitive offloading. They often use it to, make their assignments easier, or they use it. And I think they need to really be careful about that, because the more that we offload our own cognitive abilities, the more we're kind of going to lose that ability. We don't want to become servants to AI, because now AI is doing the thinking for us. We want to use AI to the degree that we do, in service of taking us in new directions that weren't possible before. I think a lot of students underappreciate the power or the importance of what others have called desirable difficulties. Sometimes if you make things, learning, for example, more difficult for yourself in the right way, then it actually makes the learning more effective. You retain that information better. You have a higher level of competence. And people need to be careful about smoothing the process so much through AI that they lose the benefits of this cognitive challenge. And the other thing, that's sort of a complementary viewpoint there, is I feel like students are often tempted to do this. Partly it's the way the incentives are built, but they want A's. They feel like they're not a success if they don't get those high grades. And I think it's really important to just to build into your own sort of mental view of the world that it's through the falling short, it's through the making mistakes, it's through getting being corrected on our initial assignment in the first place that we're going to get better later on. And so I really wish for students, for their sake, to embrace those mistakes that they make in the course of learning, and embrace, even if it means having a bad grade at first. It just means you try again and do better. So I think that the dangerous lure of AI is that people often see the results for the grades as being the end product, the end goal, whereas really its true value to me is that it gives you sort of feedback. It gives you a sort of mechanism to know, am I getting closer to am I getting better at this?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I put you on the spot with those 3 questions and you killed them. So that's great. The last one's kind of fun. I had the opportunity. I just found your TEDx talk this morning, actually. So I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I did watch the first few minutes of it. And here's the big question. How did you make me look at the 7 of spades and then remove it? How did you do that? What the heck?
Should I tell your listeners?
Do you tell in the TEDx talk? Do you reveal it at the end? Because I didn't get.
I don't. So I'll do the same thing I did for the grid video. If you're at all interested in seeing the TEDx video, go look it up before I give the answer right now. It's under. It's called "Teaching and the Vanishing Art of Connection." And I start with this card trick and put up a bunch of playing cards, and I ask people to, pick a card and memorize it. And I take the cards away. And I say, now I bet I made you pick the one card I want you to pick. And I bring him back. And I say, is your card gone? And it is. Now, I didn't actually. The trick is that I lied. I didn't actually make people pick the card I wanted them to pick. So I didn't manipulate you in that way, Garth.
You changed all the cards?
That's right. It was a matter of inattentional blindness, because people attend only to the card that they're memorizing. They don't notice that all the cards have changed.
Did you keep the red and black in the same order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no.
You didn't?
Change blindness is another a very powerful phenomenon. We don't notice even the biggest changes that happen right in front of our eyes. And so, but like you would have seen in that talk, I kind of use that exercise to make a different point, which is that when I do that, I reliably get like this gasp and murmurs from the audience, and I'm like, those murmurs right now are what I want to talk about, because it's important when you're teaching. You're not just giving information; you're trying to connect with an audience. You're trying to connect with their emotions. You're trying to give them stuff that makes them want to share with others, share, talk, turn to the person next to them and talk about it. And the more that we can incorporate those kinds of connections through our teaching, the more we'll inspire people to want to put in the effort to reconstruct their cognitive schemas, to learn, because learning's hard. learning's hard. I think people are turned away from it because they think, oh, it's too hard, but that's part of the challenge. You're not going to learn something if you don't. If it's difficult, it means you're probably doing it right in the first place.
Spoken like a true cognitive psychologist. Learning is hard. Steve, it has been such a pleasure to meet you and to have this conversation. So congrats on the new edition. Best of luck in all the research, all the cool research and teaching that you're doing. And thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.